My name is Eliza, and I'm 32 years old. For the last 3 years, since my older brother made the ultimate sacrifice for his country, I've been the financial and emotional pillar holding my family together. So when my parents not only hid my invitation to my favorite cousin's wedding, but also told the bride I couldn't make it, I was devastated. They thought they were sidelining their embarrassing, single daughter to make way for their golden child. What they didn't know was that my hero brother had left me one final secret weapon. They expected me to stay home and cry. They never expected me to arrive by helicopter. If you've ever felt like the invisible member of your own family, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And before I tell you how I turned their biggest humiliation into my greatest liberation, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about breaking free and finding your own strength. Before that fateful wedding, my life was a carefully balanced equation of responsibility and quiet sacrifice. I run a small but respected event planning business here in Charleston, a city where charm and tradition are woven into the very fabric of the cobblestone streets. I'm good at my job, meticulous, creative, and the calm center in any storm of chaos. I can juggle vendors, soothe a panicked bride, and solve a last-minute catering crisis without even smudging my mascara. My own life, however, was a different story entirely. It wasn't a well-planned event. It was a constant, draining exercise in putting the needs and desires of everyone else before my own, particularly my family. My world, as I knew it, split into a definitive before and after 3 years ago. The before was a life where my older brother, Liam, was the sun around which my entire family orbited. He was a captain in the army, a true American hero with a quick, disarming smile and a steady, reassuring presence that made everyone around him feel safe. He was the golden child, and in our family, he had earned that title 1,000 times over. He was brilliant, brave, and unfailingly kind. I absolutely adored him, and I was more than content to be the moon, quietly reflecting his brilliant light, proud just to be in his orbit. The after began with the slow crunch of tires on our gravel driveway, and a knock on the door from 2 uniformed officers, their faces grim and their posture rigid. Liam was gone, killed in action during a reconnaissance mission in Afghanistan. The light of our family, the very heart of it, was extinguished that day. In the suffocating vacuum of grief that followed, my parents, David and Carol, seemed to crumble into dust. My younger sister, Claire, who was 26 at the time, reacted with theatrical, public displays of sorrow that always seemed to end with a high-end shopping spree to numb the pain, an expense that mysteriously landed on my tab. And I, the quiet, responsible middle child, did what I had been conditioned to do my entire life. I stepped up. I organized the funeral, navigating the complex military protocols with a stoicism I didn't feel. I managed the mountains of endless, soul-crushing paperwork, and when it became painfully clear that my father's grief had crippled his small consulting business, rendering him unable to work, I started paying their bills. All of them. The mortgage on their sprawling home, the utilities, the car payments, their country club membership. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a choice. It was just an expectation I silently, dutifully met. This pattern, you see, wasn't new. It was merely amplified by tragedy. My entire life, I was the dependable one, the sturdy foundation, while Claire was the dazzling, fragile ornament. I got good grades, worked 2 part-time jobs through college to avoid debt, and built my event planning business from scratch with a small loan I paid back with interest in less than 2 years. Claire, a self-proclaimed lifestyle influencer, had her marketing degree fully funded by my parents, her chic downtown apartment subsidized by them, and her ever-present credit card bills mysteriously paid off whenever her spending exceeded her meager online income, which was every single month. She was undeniably beautiful, radiating a kind of effortless charisma that drew people to her. But beneath the surface, she was profoundly and unshakably self-absorbed. If I was the family's foundation, solid, reliable, and entirely unseen, Claire was the expensive, decorative chandelier in the foyer, demanding all the attention, consuming all the electricity, and serving no practical purpose whatsoever. The substantial financial support I provided wasn't seen as a gift, a sacrifice, or even a kindness. It was framed, with chilling regularity, as my solemn duty. "It's what Liam would have wanted," my mother would say, her voice laced with an emotional blackmail I was too weary and grief-stricken to fight. "For you to take care of us now that he's gone." The implication was as clear as it was crushing. I was the placeholder, the substitute son, fulfilling an obligation he could no longer meet. My own dreams, my own financial security, my own future, they were all secondary to maintaining their comfortable lifestyle. I remember one incident particularly vividly, about a year after Liam passed, that perfectly illustrates this dynamic. I had been working nonstop, taking on 3 back-to-back corporate events, sleeping about 4 hours a night, all to cover a sudden, expensive plumbing emergency at my parents' house. A main pipe had burst, flooding their basement. The $5,000 I had painstakingly saved for a week-long trip to the North Carolina coast, my first real vacation in almost 5 years, was gone in the blink of an eye to pay for the repairs. I didn't complain. I didn't even mention my canceled trip. I just transferred the money and paid the bill. 2 days later, I was dropping off some groceries and overheard my mother on the phone with Claire through the half-open study door. "Your father and I just felt so bad about Eliza having to cancel her little trip," she cooed, her voice dripping with saccharine sympathy. "So we decided to give you the money instead. Go buy yourself that designer handbag you wanted, sweetie. You've been so down lately." I felt the blood drain from my face, a cold, prickling sensation spreading across my skin. It wasn't just that they had taken my vacation fund and rerouted it to my sister for a frivolous purchase. It was the casual, effortless cruelty of it, the complete and utter disregard for my sacrifice. When I later tried to bring it up gently, my father dismissed me with a wave of his hand. "Claire needed a pick-me-up, Eliza. You're strong. You understand these things. It's just money, after all." My professional achievements were treated with a similar, stunning indifference. Last year, my company won the prestigious Charleston Event Planner of the Year award, a significant recognition in my highly competitive field. I was over the moon. I invited my family to a celebratory dinner at Hall's Chop House, one of the nicest restaurants in town, my treat, of course. I was so proud, so excited to finally share a piece of my success with them. For the first 10 minutes, they offered lukewarm, distracted congratulations. Then, between the appetizer and the main course, Claire announced that she had just been approved for a brand-sponsored trip to Bali. For the rest of the 2-hour meal, the entire conversation revolved around her potential itineraries, the 5-star resorts she would stay at, the outfits she would need to buy, and the perfect photo ops she would stage for her Instagram feed. My award, the culmination of years of relentless hard work and sleepless nights, was reduced to a mere footnote in the evening's real headline. Claire's fabulous, effortless life, funded in large part by my quiet, unseen labor. I sat there, a fixed smile plastered on my face until my jaw physically ached, feeling completely and utterly invisible. I told myself I was doing it all for Liam's memory, to keep the fragile pieces of our shattered family from drifting apart completely. I kept giving, kept paying, kept showing up, clinging to the naive hope that one day they would finally see me, not as a utility or a backup plan, but as a daughter, a sister, a person worthy of respect. I thought I could endure their casual dismissiveness and their blatant, unapologetic favoritism just to maintain that fragile peace. But I had no idea that a single, embossed piece of cardstock was about to shatter that illusion forever, forcing me to choose between the family I was supporting and the life I deserved. The catalyst that set the storm in motion wasn't a tragedy, but one of the most joyous occasions imaginable: the wedding of my cousin, Sarah. Growing up, Sarah and I were more like sisters than cousins. We were only a year apart, and our childhoods were intertwined. We'd spent our long, humid Charleston summers building elaborate forts in her backyard, and our tumultuous teenage years sharing whispered secrets about crushes and navigating the treacherous waters of first heartbreaks. While my own sister, Claire, was always busy curating her social life and chasing popularity, Sarah was the one I turned to for genuine, unconditional connection. She was kind, grounded, and fiercely loyal. She was one of the few people in my life who saw me for who I was. Eliza, the funny, creative, sometimes anxious woman, not for what I could provide. When she got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Mark, a wonderful, steady guy who adored her, I was absolutely ecstatic. The wedding was set for early June, at a breathtakingly beautiful historic plantation just outside Charleston, the kind of venue that graces the covers of bridal magazines. It was poised to be the event of the season, and as an event planner, my professional side was thrilled by the sheer elegance of it all. But more than that, my heart was just so full for her. I immediately dove in to help. We spent hours on the phone, me pacing in my office after a long day, helping her brainstorm theme ideas. I created detailed spreadsheets to help her vet florists and photographers, and I gave her all my insider tips on how to negotiate with caterers to get the best possible value, all for free, of course. It wasn't work. It was a labor of pure, unadulterated love. The invitations, elegant cream-colored cardstock with gold leaf lettering, were sent out in early April. I watched the mail every single day, my excitement growing with each passing afternoon. I imagined the dress I would wear, a flowing, floral print I had bookmarked online. I thought about the heartfelt toast I would give, a tribute to our lifelong friendship. I pictured the joy of watching my dearest cousin begin her new life. A week passed. The mail carrier came and went, leaving nothing but bills and junk mail. Then, 2 weeks. A small, cold knot of anxiety began to form in the pit of my stomach. This was strange. I called my mom, forcing a casual, breezy tone into my voice. "Hey, have you guys gotten Sarah's invitation yet? I still haven't seen mine, and I'm starting to worry it got lost." "Oh, the mail is just so unreliable these days, honey," she said, her voice a little too quick, a little too bright. "I'm absolutely sure it'll turn up any day now. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it." Her reassurances felt hollow, practiced. But it didn't turn up. By the end of April, I knew for a fact that other family members had received theirs. My Aunt Carol, Sarah's mom, called to ask what I was getting the happy couple as a gift. The knot in my stomach tightened into a painful cramp. I started to wonder if it had truly gotten lost, or if maybe, in the chaos of wedding planning, Sarah had somehow forgotten me, a thought so deeply painful I immediately pushed it away. It was impossible. We were too close for that. There had to be a simple, logical explanation. Meanwhile, my family's home was abuzz with wedding preparations, but it was a celebration from which I was pointedly excluded. My mother and Claire spent an entire weekend on a whirlwind shopping trip for their dresses, returning with an armful of bags from expensive boutiques on King Street. They talked about it endlessly, obsessively. At the dinner table, the guest list, the seating chart, the who's who of Charleston society that would be in attendance. Whenever I tried to join the conversation, asking about the menu or the band, my mother would deftly change the subject, or Claire would shoot me a look that was a bizarre mixture of pity and annoyance. It was a subtle, chilling, and constant exclusion. They were building an invisible wall around the event, and I was clearly, intentionally, on the outside. My father was just as complicit in his calculated silence. When I asked him directly one evening if he'd seen my invitation, he just shrugged, not even looking up from his newspaper. "Can't say that I have, Eliza. Been swamped with work." They were a united front of practiced evasion. Their behavior was so strange, so deliberately dismissive, that a darker, more insidious suspicion began to creep into the corners of my mind. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. The thought was so monstrous, so contrary to the basic tenets of family decency, that I couldn't fully let myself believe it. Why would they do that? Why would they deliberately inflict this kind of pain on me? I kept telling myself there had to be a misunderstanding. I clung to that sliver of hope because the alternative was too devastating to even contemplate. The idea that my own parents, the very people I was financially supporting, would actively conspire to prevent me from attending the wedding of one of my closest and most beloved relatives felt like a plot from a twisted psychological thriller, not my actual life. But as May began and the wedding loomed ever closer, the cold, hard reality became harder and harder to ignore. They were hiding something, a A small, cold voice in the back of my head whispered that this wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a lost piece of mail. But even in my most cynical, jaded moments, I couldn't possibly have imagined the cruel, calculated, and self-serving reason behind why my invitation had never, ever arrived. The first week of May, unable to bear the gnawing uncertainty any longer, I finally gathered the courage to call Sarah. I rehearsed the conversation in my head a dozen times, determined to keep my voice light and casual, betraying none of the panic churning inside me. "Hey, Sarah. So incredibly excited for the wedding. It's going to be absolutely perfect," I began, my voice a little too high. "I just wanted to double-check the start time for the ceremony, because I think my invitation might have gotten lost in the mail. You know how it is." There was a pause on the other end of the line, a beat of silence just long enough for my heart to hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Lost?" Sarah said, her voice filled with genuine, unfeigned confusion. "That's so weird. I hand-delivered a few to local family, but I mailed yours to your parents' house, just like you always ask us to for bigger packages. But, Eliza, your mom RSVP'd no for you over a month ago." The world tilted violently on its axis. The cheerful floral arrangement on my coffee table blurred into an indistinct smear of color. She what?" I whispered, sinking onto my sofa as my knees gave out. "Yeah," Sarah continued, her voice shifting to one of apologetic concern. "She called me the day after she got her invitation. She said you had a massive, completely unavoidable work conflict that weekend. Some huge gala for a politician in Colombia that you'd been booked for over a year in advance. She went on and on about how you were absolutely heartbroken to miss it, that you cried when you realized the dates clashed. I felt so bad for you, Eli. I was going to call you to console you, but she said you were so swamped you probably wouldn't have time to talk. A gala for a politician in Colombia." The lie was so specific, so detailed, so utterly believable to an outsider. My blood ran cold, a glacial chill seeping into my bones. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, premeditated, and meticulously crafted act of sabotage. My own mother had not only intercepted and hidden my invitation, but she had also preemptively lied to the bride, concocting a detailed, plausible story to ensure my absence was a settled fact. I thanked Sarah numbly, forcing out some words about how I would sort it out, and hung up the phone, my hand shaking so badly I dropped it onto the cushion beside me. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, the fabricated story of the political gala echoing in my head like a cruel taunt. I found my mother in the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune as she arranged freshly cut roses in a crystal vase. I confronted her directly, dispensing with any pretense of politeness. My voice was tight, a low tremor of suppressed rage running through it. "I spoke to Sarah today. She told me you RSVP'd no for me because of a work conflict. What is going on, Mom?" My mother didn't even have the grace to look guilty or flustered. She calmly set down the vase, wiped her hands on her pristine apron, and looked at me with an expression of weary patience, the kind one reserves for a difficult, irrational child. "Eliza, honey, please don't make a scene. I did it for your own good. It really is for the best." "The best for who, Mom?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. How was lying to my cousin and deliberately excluding me from her wedding for my own good? "This is a very high-profile event," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "All of Charleston's elite will be there. All of our friends. Claire is bringing her new boyfriend, Dr. Harrison, you know, the cardiologist. His family is very prominent. Your father and I we didn't want you to feel out of place, showing up all alone. It can be so awkward for single people at these things. People ask questions. We were trying to protect you from that." I stared at her, dumbfounded, the sheer, insulting audacity of her excuse stealing my breath. I wasn't a person to them. I was a potential social liability. My single status, my life, was an embarrassment to be managed. A problem to be hidden away so as not to tarnish the family's carefully curated image as they presented my younger, more successful sister. "So you decided I was an embarrassment?" I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The daughter who pays your mortgage, who keeps this roof over your head, is an embarrassment? Don't be so dramatic, she snapped, her mask of patience finally gone, revealing the cold steel beneath. This isn't about you. It's about presenting a united, successful front for the family. Something you wouldn't understand. The injustice of it was so profound it left me breathless. But the cruelty wasn't over. It was just beginning. The very next day, as if to test the absolute limits of my sanity, my father called me. He didn't mention the wedding, of course. Instead, he launched into a smooth, practiced story about how Claire was terribly stressed about finding the perfect dress for the occasion. She found the most beautiful designer gown, Eliza, he said, his voice slick with false concern. A real showstopper. But it's a bit of a stretch for her right now, with all her other expenses. I was wondering if you could help her out. Maybe in advance on next month's support? 5,000 should cover it, and the accessories she needs to go with it. I was silent for a long, ringing moment, the audacity of the request sucking the air from my lungs. They deemed me unworthy to even attend the wedding, yet they felt perfectly entitled to demand that I finance my sister's appearance at it. I was a ghost at the feast, invisible but still expected to pay the bill for everyone else's enjoyment. I mumbled something non-committal about having to check my finances and hung up, a wave of nausea washing over me. My last desperate hope was Claire. As delusional as it sounded, a small, naive part of me thought that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't fully aware of the depth of our parents' machinations. I found her at a trendy cafe downtown, taking a series of selfies with her avocado toast. I sat down and laid it all out, my voice pleading for some semblance of sisterly solidarity, for a flicker of the bond we were supposed to share. She took a slow sip of her latte and looked at me over the rim of her designer sunglasses, a small, cruel smirk playing on her lips. "Look, Eli," she said, her tone dripping with a false, cloying sympathy that was worse than open hostility. "Mom was just trying to protect you. It's really not your scene. People will be there with their successful husbands and their cute kids, and they'll ask you what's new, and you'll have to say nothing, and they'll ask why you're still single and working all the time. It's just awkward for everyone. She honestly did you a favor." The word favor was like a physical slap in the face. The patronizing pity, the smug certainty that my life, a life of independence, professional success, and quiet integrity was something to be hidden away and pitied. It broke something deep inside me. I stood up from the table without another word, the dam of my composure finally cracking and shattering into a million pieces. I drove to a nearby park overlooking the harbor and called my best friend Megan, my voice choked with ragged sobs as I recounted the entire, sordid, unbelievable story. Megan, who had been a front-row witness to my family's casual cruelty for years, was incandescent with a rage that I was still too hurt to feel. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted through the phone, her voice a protective roar. "Eliza, listen to me. This isn't just about a hidden invitation. This is emotional abuse. This is them explicitly telling you that you are worthless to them beyond your bank account. You have been their emotional and financial support animal for 3 solid years. When are you going to realize that they will never, ever change? When are you going to say that enough is enough?" Her words, harsh as they were, landed with the undeniable, clarifying force of truth. It wasn't about a wedding. It was about my entire life. A life spent on a futile quest to earn the love and respect of people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. Megan was right. They had pushed me, prodded me, and taken from me for years. But this time was different. This time, they had finally pushed me too far. And as I hung up the phone, a cold, hard resolve began to settle where all the pain had been. They thought they had silenced me, but they had just given me a reason to finally find my voice. For a few days following the confrontation with Claire, I retreated into a state of numb shock, a self-protective cocoon where I could process the sheer scale of the betrayal. I went to work. I smiled at clients. I meticulously went through the motions of my life, but underneath the placid surface, a quiet, powerful storm was gathering. The final, unbearable piece of the puzzle, the one that transmuted my grief and hurt into a cold, calculated fury, fell into place on a Thursday evening. I had stopped by my parents' house to drop off some dry cleaning my mother had forgotten to pick up from the cleaners, a menial task that, like so many others, had somehow fallen to me. I let myself in with my key, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I was about to call out when I heard their voices coming from the back porch, their tones low and conspiratorial. They were talking to my father's brother, my Uncle Robert, a man I knew was involved in some of my father's less successful business schemes. I paused in the dim hallway, hidden from their view by a large ficus tree, something I had never done in my life. But a gut feeling, a primal instinct for self-preservation, screamed at me to stay quiet and listen. "It's a brilliant strategy, David," my uncle was saying, his voice thick with a sycophantic admiration. "Getting Claire and her doctor boyfriend in front of the Hendersons at the wedding is a stroke of genius. A real power play. The Hendersons." The name was instantly familiar. They were an old-money Charleston family. Patriarch John Henderson owned one of the largest and most successful private equity firms in the state. They were legendary, almost untouchable. My father's voice was low, confident, and filled with a smug satisfaction that made my stomach churn. "Harrison, the surgeon boyfriend, is John Henderson's youngest son. They'll be at the same table. It's our one and only chance to make a personal connection outside of a boardroom. If I can just get John interested in my new coastal real estate venture, we'll be set for life. We just need to present the perfect image of success and stability." Then my mother's voice cut in, sharp, clear, and chillingly pragmatic. "That's precisely why we couldn't have Eliza there. It would just complicate the narrative. We need to present Claire as our successful, shining star, happily attached to a prominent surgeon. Having her older, single sister lingering around, it just raises questions. It looks messy. It signals that not all is perfect." We told her it was to spare her feelings from the awkward questions, and I think she bought it. My father chuckled. It was a dry, humorless, utterly dismissive sound that I will never forget. She's always been easy to manage. A little bit of guilt, a gentle reminder of her duty to Liam's memory, and she falls right in line. She'll be upset for a week or so, but she'll get over it and keep paying the bills. She always does. I stood frozen in the dim hallway, my hand clamped hard over my mouth to stifle a strangled gasp. The plastic-wrapped dry cleaning slipped from my other hand, landing on the hardwood floor with a soft thud that they didn't hear over their self-congratulatory murmurs. It wasn't about my single status being an embarrassment. That was just the cover story, a kinder, gentler form of cruelty they had manufactured for my consumption. The real reason was far more sinister, more transactional. They had actively, strategically sacrificed me, their own daughter, on the altar of a potential business deal. I wasn't just a supporting character in their lives. I was a disposable prop, a liability to be hidden away when my very existence became inconvenient to their boundless ambitions. All my sacrifices, the 3 years of relentless financial support, the canceled vacations, the late nights working to make ends meet for them, the constant emotional labor of managing their lives and their grief, it all meant absolutely nothing. It was not love. It was not family. It was a cold, hard transaction, and I was on the losing end. In that single moment of horrifying absolute clarity, I thought of Liam. I remembered a specific conversation we'd had a few months before his final deployment. He had come home on leave and had seen how they treated me, how they took my kindness for granted, how they delegated their responsibilities to me. "Don't let them burn you out, Eli," he had said, his eyes uncharacteristically serious as we sat on the porch swing. "You have a light of your own, a brilliant one. Don't let them use you as fuel to keep their own dim little flames going. Promise me you'll stand up for yourself when the time comes." I had promised, of course, but in the suffocating fog of grief after he was gone, I had forgotten. I had let my sacred duty to his memory become a gilded cage. But listening to my parents' cold, heartless calculations, I realized with a jolt that I had been honoring his memory all wrong. Liam, the man of principle and integrity, would have been disgusted by this. He wouldn't have wanted me to be their doormat, their secret benefactor, their hidden shame. He would have wanted me to fight, As I backed away silently from the door, a profound tectonic shift occurred within me. The years of accumulated hurt, quiet resentment, and weary acceptance didn't just disappear. They compressed and crystallized into a single, sharp, diamond, hard point of purpose. I was done. Done being managed, done being used, done being invisible. They had made a fatal, arrogant miscalculation. They assumed I was weak and malleable, but they had forgotten that I was Liam's sister. They thought they knew me, but they had absolutely no idea of the promise he had made me keep or the powerful tools he had left behind to ensure I could. They were about to find out, in the most public and unforgettable way imaginable. The next morning, I woke up before the sun had even begun to hint at its arrival, the cold, diamond-hard resolve from the night before still burning brightly in my chest. For the first time in 3 long, agonizing years, the suffocating fog of grief and obligation had lifted, replaced by a crystalline, almost terrifying clarity. I knew, with an unshakable certainty, exactly what I had to do. I didn't go to work. I didn't even call in sick. I simply didn't go. Instead, I drove to the downtown branch of my bank, the grand old one with the marble columns, the hushed atmosphere, and the quiet, discreet viewing rooms in the basement vault. I walked up to the counter, my posture straight, my voice steady, and requested access to my safe deposit box, number 317. The box was small and cool to the touch, a heavy, tangible object in my hands. I hadn't opened it since the week after Liam's funeral, when, in a daze, I had placed his most important documents inside for safekeeping, alongside my own birth certificate and passport. As I lifted the heavy lid, my eyes fell upon a thick, sealed manila envelope. Written on the front in Liam's strong, familiar, slightly slanted handwriting were 2 simple words: "For Eliza." My hands trembled as I carefully broke the seal. Inside were several official-looking documents, but the first thing I saw was a handwritten letter, several pages long, on his official military stationery. The letter was dated just 1 week before his final deployment. "My dearest Eli," it began. "If you're reading this, it means the worst has happened, and I didn't make it home. I know your heart is broken into a million pieces right now, and the thought of you reading this alone is the hardest thing for me to bear. But I need you to be strong for me one last time, because I know Mom, Dad, and Claire. I know how they operate. In their grief, which is real but also self-serving, they are going to lean on you until you have absolutely nothing left to give. They will make you their rock, and they will grind you down to sand." Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent, blurring his precious words. He had seen it all so clearly, predicted it with a heartbreaking accuracy. "They love you in their own flawed, conditional way," the letter continued, "but they have never truly valued you for who you are. They value what you do for them. I can't be there to protect you from that anymore, so I did the next best thing. I've set you up to protect yourself. The enclosed documents are for a blind trust fund I established in your name several months ago. My entire service members' group life insurance policy and the death gratuity payment, every single thing the Army gives my beneficiaries has been deposited directly into it. It's a significant amount, Eli. Enough for you to start over, completely and utterly on your own terms. This money is not for them." He had underlined the words 3 times with a firm, decisive stroke of his pen. "It is not to pay off their mortgage. It is not to fund Claire's next vacation or designer handbag. This is your freedom fund. It's for you to buy a house, to expand your business, to travel the world, to do whatever your heart desires without answering to anyone. Don't let them guilt you out of a single penny. Consider it my last order to my favorite sister. Live your life, boldly, for yourself. Let this be my legacy, not my death, but your freedom." At the bottom of the envelope were the official trust documents, stamped and signed by an attorney. The total amount was just over $500,000. I had been living frugally, working myself to the bone, sacrificing my own financial future to support my parents, while a fortune, a gift of incredible love and foresight from my brother, had been sitting here, waiting for me all along. I felt a tidal wave of emotions so powerful it almost knocked the wind out of me. Profound, gut-wrenching grief for my brother's loss, overwhelming gratitude for his fierce, protective love, and a white-hot, righteous anger at my family for their years of shameless exploitation. My path forward was now illuminated, as if by a bolt of lightning. I wasn't just going to the wedding. I was going to make a statement, a powerful, public declaration of independence that Liam himself had authored from beyond the grave. My very first call was to my cousin, Sarah. I told her everything, the hidden invitation, my parents' cruel, insulting justification, and the real, sordid reason involving the business deal with the Hendersons. She was silent for a moment on the other end of the line, and then she exploded. "Those absolute monsters," she breathed, her voice shaking with fury. "Eliza, I am so sorry. Of course you're coming to my wedding. You'll be my guest of honor. I'm putting you at my table. What do you need? Anything. Just say the word." "Actually," I said, a daring, audacious idea blooming in my mind, "there is something. The plantation venue has a helipad, right? For emergencies?" My next call was to a man named Jake Eagle Evans, one of Liam's closest and most loyal friends from his unit in the Army. After leaving the service, Jake had started a successful private helicopter charter company. I explained the situation, the disrespect to Liam's memory, the family's scheme. Without a moment's hesitation, he was in. "Liam would absolutely love this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "He always said you were the toughest one in the family. Consider it done, free of charge. We'll give them a show they'll never forget." Finally, I scheduled immediate, back-to-back meetings with a top-tier financial advisor and a formidable estate lawyer. It was time to untangle my finances from my parents and build an impenetrable fortress around the gift Liam had left me. I spent the next 48 hours in a whirlwind of focused, purposeful activity. I went to a high-end boutique and bought a stunning, elegant emerald green dress, a color that symbolized rebirth and prosperity. I worked with my lawyer to draft legal documents. I coordinated the logistics of my arrival with Jake and Sarah. For the first time in years, I wasn't planning a flawless event for someone else. I was orchestrating my own emancipation. The wedding was in 2 days. My family, I knew, was busy with last-minute fittings, rehearsals, and self-congratulation. They thought I was at home, licking my wounds, beaten into submission as always. They believed I was out of sight and, more importantly, out of mind. They had no idea that I was about to make an entrance that would not only command their undivided attention, but would also serve as a final, fitting tribute to the brother they claimed to idolize but had fundamentally, catastrophically failed to understand. The day of the wedding arrived, a perfect Charleston day, bright and impossibly beautiful. The ceremony was held at a sprawling historic estate, its ancient, moss-draped oak trees forming a majestic canopy over the proceedings. The air was thick and sweet with the scent of jasmine and gardenias. From my vantage point high above, circling in Jake's sleek, black helicopter, the scene below looked like a perfect, pristine miniature painting. I could see the guests in their pastel suits and floral dresses mingling on the manicured lawn. I could see the string quartet setting up near a sprawling rose garden, and I could see a small, tightly clustered group near the grand entrance of the main house. My family. As we began our deliberate, slow descent, I saw heads start to turn. The rhythmic, powerful thumping of the rotor blades grew from a distant hum to an undeniable, disruptive presence, drowning out the gentle, sophisticated strains of the classical music. Conversation ceased. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. All eyes, hundreds of them, tilted upward. Jake landed the helicopter as gently as a dragonfly on the designated helipad at the far end of the lawn, a detail Sarah had gleefully confirmed was available for emergency VIP arrivals. For a long, pregnant moment after the engine powered down, a profound, almost surreal silence fell over the entire estate. Then Jake, looking impossibly sharp and professional in his pilot's uniform, opened my door. I took a deep, steadying breath, smoothed down the silk of my emerald green dress, put on my sunglasses, and stepped out. As my heels touched the grass, a collective, audible gasp rippled through the crowd. Every single guest was now standing, their faces a perfect tableau of confusion, shock, and unadulterated awe. I ignored them all. My focus was laser-sharp, fixed on the small group that was now frozen in place as if they were statues in a museum exhibit. My mother, her hand flying to clutch the pearl necklace at her throat. My father, his face paling to a sickly, chalky white. And Claire, her expensive designer dress suddenly looking cheap and garish in the harsh afternoon Sunday. Beside them stood Dr. Harrison and his parents, the Hendersons, the very people for whom I had been deemed unworthy. Their expressions were not of shock, but of pure, unadulterated, fascinated curiosity. I began my walk toward them, my heels sinking slightly into the soft, perfectly manicured earth. The 100-yard walk felt like a mile. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant caw of a crow. As I reached them, my mother finally found her voice, a high-pitched, brittle thing that shattered the stillness. "Eliza! What on earth is this? What a dramatic surprise." "I'm full of them," I said, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the potent cocktail of adrenaline and resolve coursing through my veins. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at my father or my sister. I looked directly at Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. I removed my sunglasses and extended my hand to Mr. Henderson. "You must be the Hendersons," I said with a warm, confident smile. "It's a genuine pleasure to meet you. I'm Eliza, Liam's sister." Mr. Henderson, a man known for his intimidating business acumen, shook my hand firmly, his eyes twinkling with unconcealed amusement. "The pleasure is all ours, young lady. Your brother was a great man, a true hero, and you certainly know how to make an entrance." My father finally sputtered into action, attempting to regain control of a situation that had spiraled completely out of his grasp. "Eliza, this is highly inappropriate. This is a private event. We can talk about this later." "No," I said, turning my gaze to him for the very first time. The force of it, the cold fire in my eyes, made him physically flinch. "I think we need to talk about it now. You see, I was so surprised when I found out you had declined my wedding invitation on my behalf. And I was even more surprised to learn it was because you felt my presence would be messy while you were trying to secure a very important business deal with Mr. Henderson here." Mrs. Henderson's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up toward her hairline. My mother looked as if she might genuinely faint. Claire's face was a blotchy, mortified red. "I'm the sister who has been paying your mortgage for the last 3 years, I continued, my voice clear and carrying in the still, humid air, each word a carefully aimed dart. "I'm the one who funded the very dress my sister is wearing today. I was deemed an embarrassment, a secret to be hidden away so you could present a more successful family picture to potential investors. I imagine that kind of fundamental deception might be highly relevant to any potential business partnership, don't you, Mr. Henderson?" Mr. Henderson's friendly expression vanished, replaced by a look of cold, sharp assessment as he stared at my father. My father opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "But that all ends today," I announced, my voice ringing with a finality that was as absolute as it was liberating. "My financial support, my emotional labor, my willingness to be your invisible foundation, it is all over. 3 years ago, my brother Liam didn't just leave a legacy of heroism. He left me a legacy of freedom." I looked directly at my parents, at the shock and dawning abject horror on their faces. "He left his entire life insurance policy to me, in a protected trust, with the explicit, legally binding instructions that I use it to build my own life, free from the burden of your expectations. He knew you. He knew you would do this." I let that sink in. The son they had built a shrine to, the hero whose memory they invoked at every turn to manipulate me, had seen through them all along and had taken steps to protect me from them. "So, thank you," I said, a genuine, liberating smile spreading across my face. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are. Thank you for being so transparently selfish that you finally gave me the courage to honor my brother's last true wish." I turned back to the actual reason we were all there. The bride and groom, who were watching from the edge of the crowd with wide, supportive smiles. "I wish the happy couple a lifetime of happiness. Enjoy the party. With that, I turned my back on my stunned, shattered family. I didn't wait for their response. I didn't need one. As I walked away, Sarah rushed to my side, grabbing my arm and squeezing it tight. "You are my hero," she whispered. Behind me, I could hear the frantic, whispered beginnings of a heated argument, the death rattle of a carefully constructed lie. I didn't feel anger or sadness anymore. I felt the glorious, breathtaking, unparalleled lightness of being free. I knew the flight away from this place would be a short one, but the journey of building my new life was just beginning. I didn't stay at the wedding for long. My entrance had been the climactic scene of a story that was now officially over, and its epilogue was mine, and mine alone, to write. I shared a heartfelt, emotional dance with Sarah's father, my kind uncle who looked at me with newfound respect in his eyes. I gave the bride and groom a tearful, loving hug, whispering my congratulations and apologies for the disruption. "Don't you dare apologize," Sarah whispered back fiercely. "You just gave me the best wedding gift of all." I quietly slipped away before the cake was even cut. My statement had been made, loud and clear. The fallout, the debris from the explosion I had detonated, was no longer my concern. Jake was waiting for me by the helicopter, leaning against it with a satisfied grin. "That was one for the books, Eliza," he said, shaking his head as he helped me back inside. "Liam would be damn proud of you." As we lifted off into the deepening twilight, I looked down one last time at the party, which was now attempting to regain some semblance of normalcy, like a disturbed anthill trying to frantically reform. I could see my family huddled together near the parking lot, isolated and ostracized, their perfect image shattered in front of the very audience they had sought to impress. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something, not pity, not anymore, but a sad, detached acknowledgement of the ruins they had made of their own lives. Then I turned my face toward the setting sun and let the feeling go. Instead of going back to my quiet, lonely apartment, a space that now felt like a relic of a past life, I had Jake drop me off at the grand entrance of the Wentworth, the most luxurious and historic hotel in Charleston. I checked into a suite with a private balcony overlooking the city's twinkling lights. It was an impulsive, completely uncharacteristic, and extravagant act, and it felt absolutely incredible. I ordered the most expensive champagne on the room service menu, took a long, hot bath in the enormous clawfoot tub, and slept for 10 uninterrupted hours in a king-sized bed with crisp, cool, white sheets. It was the first night in 3 long years that I hadn't gone to bed with the heavy, suffocating weight of my family's needs and expectations pressing down on me. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than air, as if I had shed a skin I didn't even know I was wearing. The next morning, I began the practical, empowering work of my emancipation. My first call was to a top real estate agent I knew through my business. My second was to my lawyer, instructing him to proceed with the plan we had discussed. Within a week, leveraging a portion of Liam's gift, I had put a down payment on a beautiful, light-filled condo in the historic French Quarter, a place I had only ever allowed myself to dream of affording. It had soaring ceilings, original hardwood floors, and a small, charming wrought-iron balcony perfect for morning coffee and evening glasses of wine. It had a spare bedroom that I would immediately convert into the official headquarters for my new business. With my lawyer's guidance, I drafted a formal, legally binding letter to my parents. It was cold, clinical, and clear. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that all financial support, of any and every kind, would cease immediately. I logged into my bank account and canceled the automated monthly payment for their mortgage, a payment I had made without fail for 36 consecutive months. I called my cell phone provider and had their numbers removed from my family plan. I systematically and methodically severed every single financial tie that bound me to them. Then, I blocked their numbers. I blocked Claire's number. I needed silence. I needed a clean slate. I needed the space to build my new reality without the inevitable intrusion of their pleas, their accusations, or their well-honed tactics of guilt and manipulation. The feeling of freedom was intoxicating, but it was also, if I'm being honest, a little terrifying. For my entire adult life, my identity had been inextricably intertwined with their needs. Being the responsible one wasn't just something I did, it was who I was. Now, with that role gone, I had to figure out who Eliza was when she was just Eliza. It was a thrilling and daunting question. I spent my days meeting with contractors and interior designers for my new condo, and my evenings sketching out a bold, ambitious business plan. I decided to rebrand and relaunch my company under a new name, Liam's Legacy Events. It wouldn't be a legacy of crushing obligation, but one of excellence, creativity, and unyielding strength. I heard about the immediate fallout from Sarah. The Hendersons, she told me, had been polite but icily cool for the rest of the evening. The potential business deal my father had so callously sacrificed me for had evaporated on the spot, Mr. Henderson, a man who valued integrity and character above all else, was reportedly deeply unimpressed with the family drama and lack of transparency. My parents and Claire had left the wedding early, utterly humiliated. In the days that followed, they were faced with a harsh, unforgiving new reality. The mortgage payment was due. The credit card bills, which they had blithely assumed I would cover as always, were piling up. For the first time in their adult lives, there was no safety net. There was no Eliza to quietly, resentfully fix all of their problems. They were completely and utterly on their own. For the first time in my adult life, my future felt like a beautiful, terrifying blank canvas. I had no idea what came next, but I was certain of one thing. It would be spectacular. It would be successful, and it would be entirely, gloriously mine. 1 year to the day after the wedding that changed everything, I stood on the balcony of my condo, sipping coffee and looking out over the sun-drenched cobblestone streets of the French Quarter. The early summer air was warm and humid, and the sweet, intoxicating scent of sweet olive and jasmine drifted up from the hidden courtyard below. My life was completely, profoundly unrecognizable from the one I had been living just 12 short months prior, and I had never, ever been happier. Liam's Legacy Events had become a resounding, unqualified success. I had poured my brother's gift, my years of industry experience, and all of my pent-up creative energy into the business, and it had flourished beyond my wildest, most ambitious dreams. I discovered, to my own surprise, that when I wasn't emotionally, financially, and spiritually drained by the constant demands of my family, I was a phenomenal powerhouse businesswoman. I carved out a specific niche in the market, specializing in high-end charity galas and military balls events that had real meaning and purpose. I found a deep sense of fulfillment in helping organizations that supported veterans and their families, a tribute to Liam that felt authentic and powerful, a way to transmute my grief into positive action. My work was recently featured in a glossy, multi-page spread in Charleston Living, the city's premier society magazine. I was now the one being sought out by the city's elite, not as a guest to be hidden away, but as the visionary creative director who made their most important events unforgettable. My personal life, so long neglected, had blossomed in ways I never thought possible. Several months after the wedding, I had reconnected with an old college friend, a kind, intelligent architect named Ben, who had recently moved back to Charleston after a decade in New York. He loved me for my strength, my resilience, and my quirky sense of humor, not for what I could do for him. He listened to my story with deep empathy, not judgment. With him, I felt seen, heard, and cherished in a way I had never experienced before. Our relationship was an easy, joyful, equal partnership, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared laughter, and a deep appreciation for good food and historic architecture. The justice from my family's years of actions wasn't vengeful or dramatic. It was the simple, organic, natural consequence of their own choices. Faced with the sudden, harsh reality of their financial situation, they had been forced to sell my childhood home, the sprawling house they valued more for its prestigious address than for the memories it contained. They downsized to a small, unremarkable rental in a suburb, far from the manicured lawns and exclusive social circles they so valued. The loss of status was, for them, the most painful and humiliating blow of all. My father's coastal real estate venture had failed spectacularly without the Henderson investment, and he was now semi-retired, his grand ambitions humbled and diminished. The financial hardship, I learned through my ever-supportive Aunt Carol, had been the catalyst for a painful but necessary reckoning. It had forced them into family counseling. For months, they had apparently railed against my betrayal and ingratitude, but their therapist, a no-nonsense woman with little patience for self-pity, had slowly and methodically chipped away at their entrenched narrative of victimhood. They were forced to confront the toxic patterns of their behavior, the suffocating entitlement, the blatant favoritism, the years of emotional and financial exploitation. It was, from what I heard, a long, painful, and arduous process. About 6 months after the wedding, a single, handwritten letter arrived at my new office. It was from my mother. It wasn't filled with the usual excuses or demands, but with a stilted, awkward, yet what felt like a genuine apology. "We see now that we didn't just take you for granted," she wrote. "We failed you as parents. We were so lost in our own grief and our own selfish ambitions that we forgot to see the incredible, strong, capable woman you had become. I hope one day you can forgive me. I am sorry." It wasn't a magic fix, but it was a start. I agreed to meet them for coffee in a neutral public place. The meeting was strained and uncomfortable. My father could barely meet my eyes, but he managed to mumble his own apology. It was there that I established the new, ironclad boundaries. Our relationship, if it were to exist at all, would be built on a foundation of respect, not obligation. There would be no more financial support, ever. There would be no more guilt trips or emotional manipulation. If they could abide by those terms, we could begin to slowly, cautiously, rebuild something new. They agreed. Our relationship today is distant, but it is, for the very first time in my life, honest. Claire's fate was perhaps the most poetic form of justice. Without the constant financial padding from me and my parents, her glamorous, curated influencer lifestyle crumbled into dust. The brand sponsorships dried up when she could no longer afford the designer clothes and exotic trips necessary to maintain the illusion of success. Her surgeon boyfriend, Dr. Harrison, had unceremoniously dumped her just weeks after the wedding, unwilling to be associated with her family's very public disgrace. She had to give up her trendy downtown apartment and now lives in a small studio. She works as a manager at a retail boutique on King Street, a real job, with a real boss and real responsibilities. The experience, by all accounts, has been deeply, profoundly humbling. She and I do not speak, and I am at peace with that. Some relationships are not meant to be salvaged. Looking back, the helicopter wasn't just an entrance, it was a powerful symbol of my liberation. It was the exact moment I stopped being the quiet moon reflecting someone else's light and became my own Sunday. But the most profound, lasting changes didn't happen in that single dramatic moment under the sky. They happened in the quiet, consistent, courageous choices of the year that followed. The choice to invest in myself. The choice to set unforgiving boundaries. The choice to accept love that was freely and joyfully given, not earned through endless sacrifice. The justice I found wasn't in their downfall, but in my own glorious, unapologetic ascent. As I stand here today, in a home that I earned, running a business that I built from my heart, and sharing my life with a partner who cherishes me, I've had a lot of time to reflect on the turbulent journey that brought me to this place of peace. For years, I operated under the deeply ingrained, toxic belief that my personal worth was measured by my utility to others. I thought that being a good daughter and a good sister meant systematically erasing my own needs, my own desires, my own dreams. I believed my purpose was to be the silent, sturdy, uncomplaining pillar holding everyone else up. I honestly, truly thought that was what love looked like. I was so profoundly wrong. What I've learned, in the most painful and liberating way possible, is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. My family didn't see my kindness as a virtue. They saw it as a resource to be endlessly exploited. They didn't see my generosity as a gift. They saw it as an obligation they were entitled to. The greatest and most enduring lesson my brother Liam taught me wasn't in the way he lived, but in the way he prepared for his death. With his final, incredible gift, he wasn't just leaving me money, he was leaving me permission. Permission to finally, unapologetically, choose myself. Permission to build my own legacy, not just dutifully uphold someone else's. He knew that true family, true love, doesn't ask you to shrink yourself to fit into their narrative. It wants you to expand, to grow, to soar. The helicopter was the grand, cinematic gesture, the unforgettable moment everyone saw me break free. But the real, lasting freedom wasn't found in that spectacular arrival. It was found in the quiet, terrifying decision to call the pilot in the first place. It was in the satisfying click of the safe deposit box opening. It was in the firm, clear, unwavering words I spoke to my lawyer. It was in the profound, peaceful silence of my first night alone in that luxurious hotel suite. Freedom begins with a single, internal choice, the choice to look in the mirror and say, I am worthy of more than this. My relationship with my parents is a delicate work in progress. It may never be the warm, unconditionally loving relationship I once dreamed it would be, but it is real now. It is built on the hard, solid ground of truth, rather than the soft, sinking sand of illusion and unspoken resentments. And I've learned that sometimes a real, honest, distant connection is infinitely healthier than a close, toxic one. I learned that setting boundaries isn't an act of aggression or betrayal. It's a profound act of self-respect. And here is the crucial part. The people who truly love you will respect those boundaries. The ones who don't, the ones who fight them, were the very reason you needed to build them in the first place. I wanted to share my story today for anyone out there who feels invisible in their own family, for anyone who is constantly giving and rarely receiving, for anyone who has been made to feel that their dreams are secondary or an inconvenience. Your life is not a supporting role in someone else's story. You are the lead. You are the writer, the director, and the star. Have you ever had to make a dramatic stand to reclaim your own life from family expectations? What did that moment look like for you? And what did you learn from it? I would love to hear your powerful stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to hear more real-life stories of finding your strength, and share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. Thank you for listening. And always, always remember, sometimes you have to create your own invitation to the life you truly deserve.